or not God exists, and we're starting right now with Wi-Fi Gospel's opening statement. Thanks for being with us, Wi-Fi Gospel. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much for having me again, James. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Craig, for doing the debate. Should be fun. So tonight I have a pretty short opening. Usually I like to take all the time that is given to me. But I've noticed that sometimes by doing that, I'll make an opening statement that sometimes goes over some people's heads, probably mostly my fault because, yeah. Anyway, in order to ask the question, does God exist? You are assuming that knowledge is possible, right? How so? Well, you're assuming that you know the meaning of those words and that whoever you're asking the question to also knows the meaning of those words, right? Let's go a little bit deeper. It's actually a contradiction to say that knowledge is impossible. Why? Because you would have to actually know that knowledge is impossible in order to say that knowledge is impossible. Now, if you try to back up and say, well, I don't know, I just think or believe that knowledge is impossible, what you've really admitted is that you could be wrong. And if it's possible that you could be wrong, then it's possible that knowledge is possible, right? Even the denial of knowledge presupposes the possibility of knowledge. So the statement, knowledge is possible, is necessarily true. You can't get around that. But here's the issue. This statement is not a problem if God exists. Why not? If there is a God who has created the universe and humans with the intention for us to know him and know the universe, it follows that he could reveal things to us such that we can know them for certain. And it also follows that we would be able to use epistemic theories such as empiricism in order to know things. The difference is that we, an example of empiricism, don't have to rely on our senses in order to justify our senses. And so as a Christian or as someone who believes in God, how do we know that our senses are reliable? Because God has created the universe and humans with the intention for us to know him and know the universe. And how do we know that's true? The impossibility of the contrary. Because if it were not true, knowledge would be impossible. And we know that that statement itself is contradictory. So again, if there is no God, then we cannot use revelation as a way to justify how we know things, to justify our epistemic theories. And thus, we are stuck with autonomous epistemology, the view that human reason, experience, and sense perception are the ultimate standard for truth and knowledge. So how does one using autonomous epistemology answer the question, how do you know your senses are reliable? Because in this question, the reason we ask this question is when somebody tries to use empiricism as an epistemic theory, meaning that we can know things based on empirical observations and data. So the only answer that most people have given me is that they observe past instances of their senses being reliable. You ask other people if they experience the same things that you're currently experiencing. In that we have doctors that use machines to test our senses. The problem is, in order to observe any of those tests or measures, you would have to actually use your senses, the very thing in question. Think about it. The first one, observing your past instances of your senses being reliable. In any way of do that, you're relying on your memory, you're relying on your past use of your senses, right? Your senses could have not been reliable. How do you know that? If you're asking other people the way that you get their experience, whether they write it down, whether they speak it to you audibly, you have to use your senses in order to take that information in. And then the same thing again with doctors that use machines. In order to read these machines, in order to get this information from the doctors, you have to use your senses, the very thing you're trying to prove reliable, and empiricism. And that's why we call it circular reasoning. The justification assumes the thing it's trying to justify. You can't do that. It's a logical fallacy. So I'll just end it with this. Very simple. Either God exists or God does not exist, right? It's a true dichotomy. It can only be A or B. Not A or not A. And it is not true that God does not exist. How do we know this? We go back to our examples. In autonomous epistemology, I use empiricism as a quick example. Give me any example. And if you have to use yourself to justify yourself, it's circular reasoning. So it is not true that God does not exist. And we get an inference from that because it's called the double negation elimination inference rule, a valid inference rule in logic and classical logic. We infer from that, therefore, God exists. And that's my opening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that opening. And folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, I'm your host, Dr. James Coons. We are a fully neutral debate channel hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. And if you have not heard, if you've been living in a cave on Mars with your fingers in your ears, DebateCon 6 is our debate conference that Modern Day Debate puts on. It's happening in person in Nashville, Tennessee, this November 15th and 16th. Craig, Fight the Flat Earth, will be taking on Witsit Gitsit, his old nemesis. This has been years, I think, since they've debated. They're going to debate whether or not, if I remember right, it's going to be great. Check out the tickets link and find out the topic for yourself. You don't want to miss this. The tickets link for DebateCon 6 is at the top of the description box, and it's pinned at the top of the live chat. And Craig, Fight the Flat Earth, will also be debating Rachel Wilson. It's going to be amazing. You don't want to miss out. For real, folks. Nashville, Tennessee. Check out the tickets now. The early bird discount tickets are going away tomorrow night. So grab your tickets now while they're on sale. You get the tickets on sale. And if you book your flights now, the flights are more economical as well because they're well in advance. With that, thank you very much, gentlemen. Craig, the floor is all yours as well for your opening.
Hello, thank you very much for having me on, James. Yeah, I am very excited for going back to DebateCon 6, even more excited now that I'm debating Witsit. That's going to be spicy. So is God real? Here's the thing. I could stand here right now and tell you the flying spaghetti monster created the universe in 5 days whilst hammered on rum, and that pirates are his chosen people. And guess what? That statement has exactly as much evidence as your God claim, which is none. Nada. Zilch. You don't get to assert an invisible sky wizard popped reality into existence and then sat back with a smug grin. If that's valid, then so is my drunk celestial pasta chef. Science doesn't work that way. Reality doesn't care about your feelings. We need evidence first, belief after. Religion does the opposite. Belief first, excuses after. That's not truth. That is some kind of self-deception. Although my opponent didn't bring up this argument, one of the biggest arguments I hear about God being real is intelligent design. And it always kind of bugs me because if there was a God, then yeah, they would give intelligent design. That means the human body is a bit of a problem because the human body is really badly designed. Breathing and eating using the same tubes. That's why we choke to death on sandwiches. Octopuses don't choke. We're supposed to be the pinnacle of creation, but we're dying because soup went down the wrong hole. Our eyes blind spot. Our retinas seem to be wired backwards. The cables are in front of the sensors. Squids and octopuses don't have it like that. So apparently the all-knowing creator gave the seafood HD version and handed us a budget model. The nerve voice detour, the nerve that runs from your brain to your larynx, instead of going straight down, it loops all the way into your chest and back up. It's like meters long and pointless. That's not some kind of divine planning. It's what happens when evolution just keeps stretching. Wisdom teeth, half the time they don't fit in your mouth. Surgery, pain, expense. The spine's supposed to carry your weight, but it's bent fishing rod, actually set up for walking on all fours. That's why chiropractors drive nicer cars than most preachers. Knees, as I can attest, a simple hinge joint supposed to support my entire body weight. No, one awkward step and boom, ACL gone. Say goodbye to walking properly for a year, or in my case, forever. Sinuses drain upwards. That's like putting a toilet flush on the ceiling. The prostate, for men, it wraps around the urine tube like a boa constrictor, and later in life swells up and makes you pee like a broken tap. Thanks, intelligent design. Testicles are sensitive, fragile organs literally dangling outside of the body. Evolution did that because sperm don't like heat. If a god designed that on purpose, he'd get a wicked sense of humor. Vitamin C gene, well, nearly every other animal makes it vitamin C, but we don't. Our gene for that broke. People used to die of scurvy because of that. Thanks, designer. Leftovers, appendix, goosebumps, tailbone, wisdom teeth, all useless junk now. That's not good design. That's, messy. Childbirth is my favorite one. So many women die from giving birth. Like the back in before modern medicine, the chance of survival on childbirth was like 20%, It's not intelligent design, it's duct tape and guesswork. So, if the God was real and intelligently designed a human being, it didn't do a very good job. So either God didn't intelligently design us or is really, really bad at his job. And the main problem for me is that if your God actually wants everyone to know that he exists, why is he so bloody shy? He supposedly made the whole universe, galaxies, supernovas, black holes, but he can't even etch, hello humans, I'm God, into the moon. That would be a slam dunk, clear, obvious. We wouldn't have to have this debate. But instead, what do we get? We get ancient books full of talking snakes, genocides, and rules about mixed fabrics. The evidence for your God is identical to the evidence for the flying spaghetti monster, who, I remind you, cranked the universe in 5 days drunk and chose pirates as his holy people. Honestly, that's cooler than anything in your book. Science says let's test it, measure it, and then attempt to prove it. Religion says just believe. If you ask questions, then you're the problem. Science gave us antibiotics, rockets to Mars, and the ability to talk across the planet instantly. Religious gave us the Inquisition, witch trials, and televangelists. If there's a God and he's making us do that, then, it makes no sense and gives me evidence that there not being a God, certainly not one that is good. So is God real? Well, then show me the evidence, not just your feelings, not an old book, not your you can't disprove it nonsense. Show me something that only your God could have done. Until then, your God has the same credibility as Zeus with a hangover, Thor swinging his hammer, or the flying spaghetti monster, who at least had the decency to get drunk and whip up the universe in 5 days flat. So here I stand, evidence over myth, science over superstition, logic over fairy tales. And if any God really wants to make me believe, do me a favor. I'm currently doing a membership drive. I've been going for about 6 hours, and every membership adds 3 minutes. So if there is a God, can you just scroll more members across the moon for me? Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you very much for that opening as well. Folks, we are very excited. I got to tell you, both of our guests are linked in the description. Just so you know, not only that, but as I mentioned, Witsit gets it, and Flat Earth collide. This was just confirmed today. It'll be at DebateCon 6. That tickets link is in the description box and pinned at the top of the chat here at Modern Day Debate. With that, gentlemen, we're ready to rumble for the open dialogue. Although I gotta say, do me a favor, or remember, just to be sure that they can hear both of you. Oh, wait, I did want to ask, you guys, in terms of the Q&A, I mean, do you want this to be a hardcore match, or are you kind of like, hey, can we keep it civil? Let me know.
James, I don't care if people insult me. Do you think I come to Modern Day Debate and expect people to like me? I'm aware what the audience here think of me. I'm here for the hate and the love.
I know you like it, but to be fair, with Wi-Fi, it's okay if you're kind of like, I actually find value in civil debates. That's reasonable. You're not a wimp if you prefer that.
If Craig raises his voice once, I'm out. I'm just kidding. No, it's totally.
Shut the fuck up, you idiot.
Yeah, we're good. We'll have a good time.
Folks, I do still want to ask if you could keep the super chat civil nonetheless. If you have a question for the Q&A, we'll do the Q&A at the end. You can use either tag me at Modern Day Debate in the live chat, or super chats will be read first if you want to put a question in that way. Gentlemen, the floor is all yours.
So your main thing was that, and I don't want to straw man you here, so let me know if I'm wrong, is that we can't have knowledge without God, right?
That we can't justify the existence of knowledge, or that knowledge is possible without God.
But that's just a circle. You're saying that God is real because knowledge needs God. And I know that because God is real. I mean, that's not an argument. That's just circular sort of reasoning and literally just presuppositional nonsense. Knowledge is a justified belief because we've tested things against reality. We gain knowledge by doing science and making predictions and then testing those predictions. Knowledge does not require anything to have given us knowledge. Your argument is literally just circular reasoning that, well, we can't have knowledge about God, therefore God.
Well, you're saying that you can have knowledge without God, right?
Yes, I just explained. Knowledge is just justified true belief. So I have the knowledge that this lighter, if I let go of it, will fall to the floor. And I know that's a justified true belief because I've tested it many times. There you go. It did it then. It did it again. It did again. I have knowledge that this lighter will fall down if I let go of it. It is a justified true belief that I didn't need a deity to tell me.
Yeah. So you're relying on two things, empiricism and induction, but let's just talk about empiricism first. In my opening statement, I asked a question because empiricism relies on sense data. How do you know that your senses are reliable?
Because we test them.
Right. And in my opening, I also said that if you say that as your answer, what you're doing is circular reasoning. You're justifying your senses by assuming your senses in the past when you tested them were also reliable.
Incorrect. We test our senses against predictions to see if they match reality. So, for instance, we would say, well, my senses tell me that a hot thing will burn me. Okay. And then if I, get burnt by a hot thing, I have clarified that my senses were correct by telling me that that hot thing is going to burn me. I know my senses are reliable because they work. I eat food and I don't choke. I look both ways and avoid cars. If they didn't work, I'd already, be dead. It's just a circular reasoning from your side, asking me to justify my senses when my senses are justified by the fact that I can test and make predictions that my senses can then verify.
Right. So when you test and make a prediction, like your stove example, when you make a conclusion about your test, what do you use to make that conclusion? How do you observe that conclusion?
We analyze it to against our prediction and the results.
And what are you using to analyze it?
Whatever tool that we used. I would use my eyes to look at something. I know my eyes work because I drive a car and I don't crash into things every day. In fact, I know my eyes work because we use science to make these glasses to make sure that my eyes can work correctly so that photons can enter my eyes. The photon receptors at the back of my retinas can convert that to electrical signals to my brain to allow me to see. I know objectively that is a thing that happens because I am looking at my hand right now and I want to touch it and it happened. There's nothing presuppositional about that. There's no circular reasoning about that. I can test it against reality. I can make a prediction and see if my senses are able to do that. So, your argument of my senses aren't really reliable because I have to trust my senses for my senses is missing the point that we can test our senses against reality.
Do you I don't want to talk past each other and I don't want to ask the same question over and over again. So I'm trying to get it from a different angle. Would you need reliable senses in order to test your senses?
We need a reliable way to interpret our senses, which is what we have developed over times. For instance, going back to the fire, I put my hand over something hot. My senses tell me I am getting burned and I move it away.
Yeah,
I know that's a fact, and I can make a prediction what will happen if I ignore my senses. I will get a blister on my hand. Right? I know my senses are reliable because they relate to reality and the world around us.
And it seems like what you're saying is I know my senses are reliable because look, they're reliable.
No, because we tested them. You're missing the whole tested part. Okay, we have to. For instance, my sight. Okay. I know that my sight is reliable because I sat in an optician's chair for 96 minutes while they tested my eyes over and over again to make sure that they receive photons in the correct way by putting corrective lenses over them. My senses were tested against reality, against an observable reality that is a measurable thing that is done so that everybody can see correctly. If this didn't work again, I would be crashing into walls instead of driving my car properly. My senses work. I know they work because they've been tested. Now, here's another quick thing. I know my senses work because I know when they stop working. For instance, I'm going a little bit deaf, and I've noticed this. I have noticed that I can't hear things as well. People have to repeat things to me a lot more often. I am getting my hearing tested. I know my senses are reliable because I know when they stop being reliable and I have to get them fixed.
And I would just say that what you're doing is telling us what is the case. And my question is asking you to provide a reason for the case, a justification for the case. And when you keep going back to testing, and you keep going back to testing, I asked you a question that you didn't necessarily answer directly. I asked you if we needed reliable senses in order to test our senses. Could you answer that more clearly for us?
No, I answered that already. I said to you, we need an ability to interpret our senses.
So that would be
our senses
yes
are tools.
No.
Our senses are tools. Our senses are designed via evolution to give us clues. We we smell because we have receptors to do that. We see because we have receptors to do that, and we can test this against reality. And we can say, well, if our senses are correct, then we should be able to do this, and then test to see if we can do that and get the result we were looking for.
And I understand that if you want to have nuance with your answer, but it doesn't really seem clear to me. Is that a yes or a no that we need reliable senses in order to test our senses?
Again, I answered the question. We need a way to interpret our senses. I don't know. I really don't want you to keep asking me this. Oh, it is. It's a direct answer to your question. We need a way to interpret our senses, to be able to determine if they are reliable. Okay.
What are we using to interpret?
The way that we interpret them is by testing them against reality. Again, I sat in a optician's chair for 96 minutes, having my senses tested against reality. Testing, they have cameras that look at the things that I'm looking at and simulate eyesight to see what I should see with my eyesight and test them against each other. Yeah, you can see if your senses are reliable by testing them against reality and not crashing when you drive your car.
So when I asked you if we need reliable senses in order to test our senses, you said,
are you going to keep asking me the same question?
Yes, I am, because you're not answering the question. Now let me finish.
I've answered your question. I'm not going to answer. I'm not going to answer the question again. Okay, I have answered your question. If you don't like the answer, that's your problem, and you can do another one. But I have answered your question, whether you like the answer or not.
One sec, just to forgive me. I'm not trying to take sides. This is not me saying that there's like a knockdown argument or anything. Is I think that theoretically, Wi-Fi might say, and like I said, I'm not saying there's no answer for this, is that if Wi-Fi said, yeah, but like when you do look at like the machines or the cameras that like assess it, like what are you using to assess like whether or not they're correct?
Predictions against reality.
Do you say
everything? Every single thing is about predictions against reality. We know what our senses should do. Biologically, we know what our senses should do and allow us to do. So we make a prediction and then we test our senses against that prediction to see if they match the reality of our biology and what they should function as. If they match the reality of that biology of what we expect them to do, then we know that they are functioning correctly and reliably. If you test them multiple times and every single time you test your senses and they match the known prediction of what your senses should get, then that is what science would say a reliable outcome to a particular result.
I mean, he doesn't want me to ask the question again. I'm fine with moving on. I would just like to show what happened here. When I asked him if we need to have reliable senses in order to test our senses, he didn't say yes or no, and I'm not sure exactly if it is yes or no, but he did say we need a way to interpret them.
It wasn't a yes or no question.
Let me finish. It was, but
no, it wasn't.
If we need a way to interpret them, I then asked him, how do we interpret them? And he said, we interpret them by testing them. So when I ask, do we need reliable senses in order to test our senses? He just says, no, we need a way to test our senses. I mean,
yes, we have to test our senses. What we do is we make a right. It's very, very simple. Our biology is very specific. Okay, our biology is set up so that our senses work in a particular way. There's electrical signals and chemical reactions that are involved in our senses doing the things that our biology says that they should do. So we test if our biology matches that prediction of what it says. very much the same as we can look at the the orbits of the of the planets and stuff, based on their mass and velocity and everything. We can make a prediction of where they're going to be at a certain time. We can also make a prediction based on our known biology of what a sense will allow us to do, and then we test that against reality. And if the reality matches the prediction of what biology says, we can infer from that, according to science, that our senses are reliable. You're acting like this is some kind of big gotcha. Of course, I use my senses. No, it's really not. Of course, I use my senses to test my senses. What else am I supposed to use? Telepathy? No, the difference is I don't pretend that they are infallible.
I don't.
I again test them against reality. Example, I see a chair. I think that's a chair. I sit on it. If I don't fall on my arse, my senses just pass the test. And guess what? That works for everyone. Christian, atheist, Muslim, Jedi. If our senses aren't reliable most of the time, you wouldn't even make it to this debate without accidentally digging your eye out with a spoon whilst eating your breakfast. We know our senses are reliable because we make a prediction and test against them. Yes, we have to use our senses to do that, but if it matches the prediction, it doesn't matter.
Is that circular?
Not in the slightest, no, because you have to have a prediction to test. And that prediction includes using your senses. So if you are claiming that the scientific method is circular, that just shows that maybe you don't understand how science works. We can absolutely use our senses to test our senses if we are putting in the hypothesis to prediction to test to analysis level of the scientific method, basic version. So yes, we use our senses to test our senses, but we make a prediction as to what those senses should be and test it against reality. There's nothing circular about that in the slightest. The only circular thing here is your argument of we need God for knowledge, because without God, we can't have knowledge. You are doing Presup 101, which is kind of, I thought you would have moved on from that, if I'm honest.
Well, I thought you would have understood that if you have a conclusion and an argument, and your conclusion is in the premises of your argument, then that's called circular reasoning. But you don't.
No, that's not how it works with the scientific method. No, it's not circular reasoning. There's no conclusion within my question. If you want to do it with the scientific method, it's a very, very simple way to do it. You make an observation, and the observation here is that if I put my hand over something hot, I feel a burning sensation. So I make a hypothesis. Well, my hypothesis is that I have senses, that my body allows me to see if something is hot as a warning system. Okay, that's an observation and a hypothesis. Next thing you do is you make a prediction. If I keep my hand there, according to my hypothesis, the heat will damage my hand and I will get blisters. So then you test it by holding your hand there, and your senses tell you that it's hurting and it's hurting and it's hurting and you're getting blisters. And afterwards, you look at what's happened and you go, you know what? That prediction about my senses was correct. My senses seem to have reliably informed me that if I didn't move my hand away, I would get burned. The evidence is that I didn't move my hand away and I've got burned. There's nothing circular in that. That is a step-by-step scientific method.
Yeah, and you said there's no conclusions in the scientific method?
Okay, step one, observation. Step two, hypothesis. Step three, prediction. Step four, test. Step five, analysis. Your analysis is depends on what your analysis is.
You make a conclusion.
If your analysis is that you don't have sufficient data to come to some kind of conclusion, you repeat and you repeat
until you can make a conclusion.
Until you can make until you are unable to falsify your hypothesis. That's what you do. Science isn't about coming to conclusions. Science is about showing that you are unable to falsify a hypothesis. And in that case, I was unable to falsify the hypothesis that putting my hand over something hot will make it burn. There's no circular reasoning. That is simply step-by-step scientific method. If, and I want to be very clear here, you claim that is circular reasoning, then you are claiming the entire scientific method is in fact circular reasoning. Is that where you want to go?
No, I'm not doing that. What I'm showing you, let me speak. You just spoke for 5 minutes. Let me speak.
Yeah, but you can't claim that it's circular reasoning then. But you can't claim
okay,
circular
let
reasoning,
me
just so
speak now.
you're aware.
Thank you.
If you
No,
do it,
it's
you're saying
circular
the
reasoning
scientific
because
method
the
is.
scientific method
Oh,
isn't
so
an
the scientific
argument.
method is circular
Let me
reasoning.
speak,
You just said
Craig.
that then.
Shut up and let me speak. Thank you. You need.
Well, no, I just
you need
told
to make an
you'd say that, and you
argument.
did.
You need
Hold
to
on,
make an
let's-
argument.
hold on.
Yeah, I let you speak without interrupting you. Let me speak.
And you did exactly what I said you'd do. Good job.
Okay. Good faith, Greg. Good faith. Anyway, you said that there's not conclusions in the scientific method. Fine. There's conclusions in an argument. So when you're making an argument, if you're using the scientific method, you're missing a conclusion. Arguments require conclusions. So are you making an argument that your senses are reliable? And is the conclusion of your argument that your senses are reliable?
I am making a hypothesis that my senses are reliable, and I am failing to falsify that hypothesis. I base my position in life on logic, evidence, and reasoning. To conclude that my senses are reliable, I would do multiple tests and multiple tests and multiple tests before I could conclude 100% that my senses are reliable. But that's not what science does. Science doesn't give you complete, definite answers. It never says that it's complete. What I have done is I have failed to falsify the hypothesis that my senses are not, that my senses are reliable. In this particular case, I failed to falsify the hypothesis that I have heat receptors on my hand. That's simple. That is the scientific method.
All the
And
while relying on
you
your
literally,
senses.
you literally did what I said you would do, and you claimed that the scientific method is circular reasoning because I
No,
did the scientific method. Yes, no, you did. You did. You literally did because I did the scientific method, and you claimed what I did was circular reasoning. Therefore, you are claiming that the scientific method is circular reasoning.
You said the scientific method doesn't include conclusions, so it can't be circular if there's no conclusions, Craig.
But you just claimed that it does have conclusions and it's circular.
No, I said that when you make an argument, arguments require conclusions. If you don't
No,
have a
I am making a
conclusion, you just have
hypothesis.
premises. Okay, so you have
Mine's
no
a
argument that your
hypothesis.
senses are reliable. Thank you.
I have a hypothesis, and I failed to
Great.
falsify that
I have a
hypothesis.
hypothesis too that you will claim that your senses are reliable while relying on the reliability of your senses. Who cares
yeah,
about
we test
hypothesis?
that, though.
I want an argument.
So you're going with the circular reasoning again. Once again, there's no other way to test that your senses are reliable without also using your senses. But nothing in science says that is circular reasoning in the slightest. It is simply a way to test things. We make a prediction against biology, and then we see if that prediction is true. Biology says that if our senses are reliable, they will do X.
What field
Okay.
deals with arguments, Craig?
I'm talking. Biology says that if our senses are reliable, they will do X. Do you agree?
Say that again.
Biology says that if our senses are reliable, they will do a particular thing. Do you agree?
Sure, yeah.
Right. Okay. So we've got a prediction because we know what biology says should happen. There's nothing circular there so far. Not in the slightest. I'm walking you through this step by step because it seems I need to break out the
You're walking
grounds.
through the scientific method, which I already said isn't
Yeah.
circular if you're not making a conclusion with it. It can't, by
Yeah,
definition, be circular if
I'm
you don't
failing
make
to
a
test my
conclusion.
hypothesis.
And then do you come
That's
to a
all I'm doing.
conclusion about it?
You're
at the
trying
end?
to force the words conclusion on your terms, but I am telling you the way that I live my life and the way that I would determine if my senses are reliable is by failing to falsify the hypothesis that my senses are reliable. We can do many tests to see if my senses are reliable based on hypothesis of my senses being reliable.
I can
Now let's
settle
do
this
it.
really
Let's do it
easily.
another way, right? Let's do it another way, right? I'm going to make a hypothesis that my eyesight is really, really good. Okay. My prediction is if my eyesight's really, really good, I'll be able to read the number plate of the car out there. Oh wait, I can't do that. Oh, I just falsified the hypothesis that my eyesight is reliable because it's not. My eyesight is not reliable because I'm pretty much blind as a bat, which is why we use science to do these, make these things here, so that my sight is now reliable. Simple.
Yeah, all the while relying on the reliability of your senses, which you've already admitted.
Yeah, which is no problem in the slightest. You may think that's a gotcha, but it's really not.
All right. So in my statement then, which you said was circular, could you explain how it was circular again?
Because you're saying you need knowledge, sorry. You need God for knowledge, therefore God exists. That's the most circular that you can get. That
so
is the literal circular reasoning.
If I grant you that, then there's no difference between what we're doing.
Oh, there's a very big difference between what you're doing because mine's
Zero.
testable and yours isn't.
Who cares? It's still circular.
No, it's not circular in the slightest. No, it's not.
Yeah,
yours
because when I
just
test it,
yours is just no, hold on. Yours is just asserting something that is not testable, and saying,
no, it is.
Well, no, it's not testable. There's a God. That's not testable in the slightest.
No, knowledge.
Right. So
knowledge is testable. We tested it just now.
The fact that it came from God isn't testable.
Yeah. It's testable within an argument.
So your hypothesis that knowledge came from God,
I don't have
therefore God is real.
My argument doesn't rely on the scientific method like yours does.
But so your argument is just a presuppositional circle then?
No, it's a philosophical argument.
It's just a presuppositional circle.
Wait,
God, you need God for knowledge, therefore God is... Hold on. I don't understand how you don't see that this is circular. You're literally saying, and I checked that I'm not strawmanning you here. You confirmed to me I'm not strawmanning you.
No, I did not. I just said if I granted you the interpretation of my argument.
I asked you if I was being strawmanning you, and you didn't correct me. So am I strawmanning you when I say your argument is you need knowledge for God, therefore God exists? Is that your argument, yes or no?
That is not my argument. That's one premise and one conclusion.
So if that's not your argument, then give me your argument about knowledge and God.
Right.
Because those are the exact things that you said. You literally said you need God for knowledge, therefore God exists. And I asked you earlier if that's what you said, and you said yes.
I usually don't. Well, I usually get into the syllogisms. I tried not to tonight to not bore the audience, but we'll get right into it.
Right. It's very simple. Do you believe that you need God for knowledge, and that's how we know that knowledge exists?
Yes, but that's not the way my argument is framed.
So there we go. You have a circular reason. You literally
you're going to let me give my argument, or you're just going to keep
presupposition. No, you've just agreed what your argument is.
So you don't want to hear my argument?
You've just agreed with me what your argument is, and I'm going to just break out the fact that it is the most presuppositionist argument that there is. We do not need God for knowledge. Knowledge is something that is testable. We don't need any kind of deity for that, okay? We don't need to go around in circles. We don't need to go around in circles about that. Knowledge is not important here. The question is God real?
Do you know that?
No, knowledge is not important here. The question is God real?
Do you know that it's not important?
Right. The question is God real? Knowledge is not important to the question.
Right.
Knowledge, I'm talking, wait. Knowledge.
You don't like it when people interrupt you, do you?
Hold on. Knowledge is not important to the question of is God real? What would be important is show me that God is real, okay? I want to be very clear. Saying that knowledge exists is not evidence that God is real, okay? I reject that entire argument. Do you have any actual evidence that God is real, i.e. a sighting of God? Or have you just got your beliefs that knowledge equals God?
I do want to go into 1 minute segments if you guys are open to that.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. But I will make a prediction that he will refuse to answer any of my questions. And he will say that I have not answered his questions when I have. Because that's exactly what Christian apologists that don't understand the mythos do.
We got to give Wi-Fi a minute now. Here we go.
All right. Am I going to see it, or I'll use my own timer? Cool. So
let's count to 60.
Craig says that my argument is circular and then doesn't want me to give my argument. So here it is. This is the first step of the argument. We'll see how far I get in 60 seconds. If knowledge is possible, then God exists. Knowledge is possible, therefore God exists. Show me in the premises where this circular reasoning is. It's not there. The next part of the argument. Either God is a necessary condition for the possibility of knowledge, A, or not A. It is not the case that God is not necessary, not A. Therefore, God is a necessary condition. Show me where the circularity is. And the last one, I don't have it pulled up here, but it's a reductio on your worldview, just like I showed you. So let's hear it. Where's the circularity?
We'll get to Craig for 60 seconds.
What do you mean, where's the circularity? You literally said it in your statement. If God is real, knowledge exists, therefore God is real. That is circular reasoning. That is circular reasoning 101. That is presuppositionalist 101. Your argument only works if you smuggle your own conclusion into your first premise. Why should I accept that knowledge is only possible if God exists? Well, that's the whole thing that you are trying to prove. You've built the conclusion into your premise, and that is circular reasoning, not logic. It's very, very simple.
All right. Yeah. I mean, you done?
We'll kick it over to 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you obviously don't understand philosophy or logic or how to make arguments.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. No, you don't get to just insult me.
I have to give him 60 seconds.
Because I'm not insulting you. Like, you don't understand what modus ponens is. Can you tell me then what modus ponens is? Here, let me give you a different argument. If Socrates is a man, Socrates is mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. Is that a circular argument, Craig?
Yeah, very circular. It's more, you're just doing presuppositional smugness. Modus ponens is a very simple logical rule. If P then Q, then P is true, therefore Q is true, right? You know, it's your version. Your version is if knowledge is possible, God exists. Knowledge is possible, therefore God exists, right? Do you disagree?
That's correct.
Okay, well then you're a very dodgy premise. You're using fancy Latin doesn't really make your first premise true. You're smuggling the conclusion into the premise. You are smuggling the conclusion of knowledge needs God into the premise of God is what gives us knowledge. That is the most circular reasoning there is. And to say that I don't understand philosophy when you are giving a circular reasoning and then trying to say that it's not circular reasoning, it is absolutely incredible. And then trying to claim that the scientific method is circular reasoning, it's, actually surprising that a grown man can think that backwards, if I'm honest.
Yeah, so again, this is my argument. If knowledge is possible, then God exists. That's premise one. That's a conditional statement. Knowledge is possible. That means if the condition is met, right? The condition is met here. Craig doesn't disagree that knowledge is possible. We agree on premise two. No issue there. Conclusion, therefore God exists. It's literally
that's circular reasoning.
I'm not done yet. This is literally simply modus ponens. And my conclusion, therefore God exists, is not in any of my premises. I have a conditional statement as my first premise.
It literally is.
Let me easily show this to you. Look, if P, then Q. P, therefore Q. Oh no, Q is in the conclusion and Q is in the first premise. Modus ponens is circular.
Yeah, it's literally circular reasoning. Just because you're saying it's modus ponens doesn't stop it being circular reasoning. You are putting your conclusion into your premise. So, you are literally saying you can't have knowledge without God. That is the reason God exists. That is what you are saying. That is the most circular reasoning that you can have. Right? Sorry. Okay. So anyway, I want to move on to actual kind of empirical evidence for God. All right. There's no evidence that God exists that I have ever seen that is something that we can test. Okay. I don't want to, don't want you to have to, hurt your brain too much with this, but could you actually give me, a sighting of God?
Have I seen God personally? No.
Or has anyone personally seen actually God?
Yes, but it's interesting. You ask me for empirical evidence, and then you ask for witness testimony, which wouldn't line up with empirical evidence.
Well, has anyone seen God?
Yes.
In fact, other people seeing God and recording it would be classed as empirical evidence if it's something that's happened multiple times.
Hold on.
That's what empirical evidence is. When an event is actually recorded, and then multiple iterations of that event are recorded. That is what empirical evidence is. But have you seen God?
No, but me not seeing God does not disprove God. That's hilarious.
No, I'm not saying that it disproves God. Your job here is to prove that God is real.
Yeah, and we showed
so to
exactly
prove,
how.
And circular reasoning about knowledge doesn't prove that God is real. Seeing God and actually, God being a thing is what makes God real. So what actual proof of God do you have other than circular reasoning about knowledge?
All right, I'm going to take 60 seconds without interruption, please. Craig is saying that we need empirical evidence somehow in order to prove God, right? The problem is he believes in all sorts of things that you do not need empirical evidence for, such as the laws of logic, the concept of truth. These are not material things that we have empirical evidence for, yet Craig believes in them. So it's just a red herring. He's just saying, unless you don't have this specific kind of evidence that I would accept, and the only kind of evidence that I would accept, then what you believe is not true. Even though I gave him the proof of it, and he just hand waves it away.
Okay, you didn't give any proof. You gave circular reasoning. Knowledge exists, therefore God. That is just circular reasoning. You can't get away from it. You can dress it up as modus ponens all day, but your first premise, if knowledge is possible, God exists, already assumes that God is the only possible grounding of knowledge. That's your conclusion baked right into the premise. That's not logic. That is theological mad labs, dude. You know, it's ridiculous. And yes, I am a science-based person. I look at empirical evidence and facts that can be tested, like the fact that we can test if our senses are reliable. That is a fact that, you know, science can show is something that is not falsifiable. So I'm asking you for just, you know, whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter. I am just simply asking you if you have some empirical evidence for your God.
I'm not making an empirical argument for
that
this.
Wasn't what I was asking. I was asking if you have any
Craig,
empirical evidence for your God. The question was, do you have any
I'm not
empirical
going to
evidence
answer
for
your
God?
question if you don't let me answer the question, Craig.
It's okay. I'll put it in the phrase of a yes or no question. Do you have any empirical evidence for your God? Yes or no?
Can you like actually let me have a minute without interrupting me like we were just doing?
We'll do.
Are you able to
1
answer
minute.
yes or no though?
We're gonna do a 1 minute here, and the floor is yours. Wi-Fi.
I have empirical evidence for God through witness testimony. You will not accept this witness testimony, and I don't expect you to, which is why I don't make an argument for God that is empirical. I made an argument for God tonight that is philosophical. Now, the support of premise one, if you want to know how the conditional connects to the premise or to the conclusion, then I will tell you that. Just saying that if you find Q in the conclusion and Q in the premise one, then it's circular is just bad philosophy and bad logic. Like it's literally philosophy 101. So the support for premise one, how the condition connects to the conclusion, is either God is a necessary condition for the possibility of knowledge or not. That is a true dichotomy. I've shown you that it is not the case that God is not necessary. How have I shown you that? Because like Craig keeps saying, we have to use our senses in order to test our senses, but that's not circular. Sorry, that is circular, and that shows that without God, you can't have a justification for empiricism or any episteme.
Lovely assumption. Yeah, again, no circular reasoning at all in using your senses to test your senses against predictions. That is literally not circular reasoning, but what you are doing is the most basic form of presuppositionalist, Christian apologist, you know, circular reasoning. You're trying to run the false dichotomy thing. You know, either God is necessary for knowledge or he isn't. If he isn't, then I can't justify knowledge, therefore he must be. It sounds good, but it's kind of just smoke. You're trying to box me into a yes/no answer where reality has more than two options. I prepared a bunch. I knew exactly what you were going to say, so I've actually written scripts for everything because you presup the same way every time. It's like saying either Batman built the pyramids or nobody did. There are other options, you know. Your claim for God is necessary for knowledge. Well, then prove it. Show me one example of knowledge that only makes sense if God exists. That's what I'm going to ask here.
All right, so I will answer your question, but you said that it is a false dichotomy. After I answer your question, I want you to show me why it's a false dichotomy. Now, what's a knowledge claim that only exists with God, that only makes sense if God exists? Every single knowledge claim. Because if you say that you don't need God, no, I'm giving you my answer, Craig. Calm down. Every single knowledge claim.
Your premise in
no, because every epistemic theory.
1 sec. I do, to be fair, I want to keep with the 1 minute. So if I do give Craig a 1 minute, because I gave you 1 minute, before we go into like dialogue, Craig, do you want like a full minute to respond? But then I got to give Wi-Fi a full minute as well.
Yeah. Right. He wants to know about the false dichotomy. Yeah. So you're trying to box me into a yes/no answer when reality has more than two options, saying either God grounds knowledge or nothing does is a false dichotomy. It's like saying either Batman built the pyramids or nobody did. I've already said that. It must have gone, you know, through your head. There are other options. You are saying either God exists and he creates knowledge or knowledge doesn't exist. No, that's just saying that it couldn't have been something else. It couldn't have been the flying spaghetti monster that gave us knowledge. You created a false dichotomy by saying it has to be God when other things could exist. That is why it's a false dichotomy. That is the literal basis of a false dichotomy when you're saying those are the only two options. when it's not. You assume it's the only two options when other gods are, been around way longer than your one. So why couldn't it have been one of them? False dichotomy.
Back to Wi-Fi.
Yeah, so complete straw man of the premise. It's not either God is the necessary condition for the possibility of knowledge, or nothing is. It's either God is or something else is that is not God. God here isn't specific in saying, is it the Islam God? Is it the Christian God? It's just God, because I don't know if you knew, but the premise of the debate is, does God exist? So either it is God or it isn't. How is that not a false? How is that a false dichotomy? Because the one you just responded to was not the premise.
The false dichotomy is about your claim of knowledge, right? You're saying either God ground knowledge or nothing does, right?
No.
Well, what would ground knowledge if not God?
That's what I'm asking you.
So you don't have an answer of what else it would be. So for you, it would be nothing.
No, you're saying it's your own senses, for example.
No, I'm saying that is one of the things that allows us to know what knowledge is.
Okay, so but my argument,
your dichotomy is it's either God or there's no knowledge.
No, I didn't say that.
I'm going to do the same thing where, who was it that had the last minute?
I did, and then he instantly asked me a question.
Okay, Wi-Fi Wi-Fi. Do you want a minute?
I mean, I prefer the back and forth as long as we let each other talk.
But sometimes, I can jump in more, but like, if sometimes Craig talks louder than you, I'll jump in more if you want. But don't just because he's louder, don't let him take over. But I'll jump in more if you want, because I know that maybe it's uncomfortable for you to call him out on it.
Well, I feel like if I raise my voice, Craig's just going to get louder, and then we're just going to be yelling at each other. But
yeah, that's how I work.
All right, well, we'll try it. We'll see what happens here. So look, Craig, I want you to understand this because that's not my premise. My premise is either God is a necessary condition for the possibility of knowledge or not. So when I say or not, I mean God is not a necessary condition for the possibility of knowledge, which is your position. You believe we can have knowledge.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but that doesn't go towards the debate prompt of is God is real. That's more, is knowledge real?
Well, because if knowledge is what my argument is.
Yeah, but we're not having an argument about is knowledge real. We know knowledge is real. So, yes. I mean, the whole of you just saying, well, knowledge is proof of God is irrelevant because there could be another thing.
Well, no, so, that's
as you've just put out in your premise, right? It's either God or not. You're not denying that knowledge exists. You're still giving that there could be another thing. So you haven't even given an argument for the existence of God. Within your own argument, then you are stating it could be something else. That's not an argument for God. That's saying it could be God or it could be something else.
Well, the could be something else is the part that you would have to prove, not me.
No, I'm not the one here making any positive statements. You are one here with the only burden. No. You're the only one here with the burden of proof that God exists.
Yes, but every time you speak,
I don't have to prove anything. I do not have to prove a single thing here. I do not have any burden here.
Wi-Fi.
Every time you speak, you're making knowledge claims, and you didn't deny that knowledge is possible. So you do have to prove, because this is my argument. Either God is a necessary condition for the possibility of knowledge or not. I say it is not the case that God is not necessary. And the reason I say this is because in my opening, autonomous epistemology, which would include empiricism without a God, needs to justify itself. And the only way it can do it is by pulling itself up by its bootstraps, like we've seen here tonight.
Yeah, you're missing the entire point that knowledge is justified. All right. We test to see if that knowledge exists. We don't need a God for that. It's just reality exists. You are starting your entire premise with, well, God exists and that's what gives us knowledge. Otherwise, it could be something else. Well, there's no evidence that it has to have been God. There's no evidence that knowledge came from God. Knowledge is something that is justified because of things that have happened. Where I wrote it down here. So knowledge is a justified true belief. Belief is you hold it in your mind. Truth, it matches reality. Justification is evidence testing and repeatability. So we don't
No.
need to even have God in this conversation when we're talking about knowledge, because all we need to do is start as a baseline here and go, oh, let's get knowledge. I want to see what happens when I drop this lighter. It hits the ground. Oh, I've now gained that knowledge, and I'm going to test it to make sure, oh, it's repeatable, it's testable. The knowledge of that lighter falling down is something that there's no way we need God for that. We just need to test it.
Right. So do you believe that there are any necessary conditions for the possibility of knowledge? I could give you some.
The necessary conditions are the ability to test something.
Well, I'm saying for example, well, no, that's not even true because you know things that you can't test.
I wouldn't confirm that as knowledge without being able to test it myself. If something is knowledge that I know personally, then I would have tested it. But other people have also performed tests, and we are absolutely allowed to refer to experts that have also performed tests that have given knowledge that has then gone out to humanity.
But you believe in things like human rights. That's not testable.
That's different to knowledge of like a physical thing that's happening. My thoughts about human rights are to do with me having empathy for other people.
Okay. Do you know that
nothing
human
to do
rights
with
exist?
God or anything? Do I believe that human rights exist?
Do you know?
I think that humans should have a set of rights, but they don't automatically exist.
So you,
I think for us to have a successful society, rights should be there. But unfortunately, rights aren't something that just exist. Okay. Human rights are something we have made up and we apply to people. But do human rights exist? Only in the sense that we have decided that they exist and they applied to someone. Did they exist without us coming up with them? Well, no.
Okay.
Because as humans, we had to decide what was right for us. And that is simply based on empathy and compassion. And none of that is to do with God.
Okay, so you wouldn't even say that you know that they exist. I understand. Now, would you know that the concept of truth exists?
If we're talking mathematically, then you can determine what are truths.
Well, no, I'm saying the concept of truth itself.
See, I'm a science person, right? I'm not a philosophy person. So I don't want to cross wires in what we consider the definition of truth. So could you just lay out in your own philosophical way what you would consider truth is, and I'll answer that question based on that.
A popular definition of truth is that which coheres with reality.
Yeah, I'll grant that.
Okay. So that is a concept.
Let me just run that through my head. A popular definition of truth is that which coheres with reality. Yes, and to have that truth, we have to make sure that it's testable, right? Otherwise, we don't know that it's a truth.
Well, that's the interesting part, because the concept itself is not testable.
The concept of truth is not testable, but whether something or not is truthful is testable. Okay. To set out what the concept of truth is, I agree with your premise. It's something that is relatable to reality, testable against reality. And as humans, we have kind of given that concept to truth based on kind of our own experience of the universe around us. And we can test that concept. We can test it for each individual thing. That concept of the way that you described it can give us a foundation of actually determining what is true by then going to the scientific method and seeing if you can falsify things or not. And again, I want to point out that I'm a science person, so I never form like complete conclusions because I'm always of the understanding that we can learn more. Did that make sense?
It does make sense, but it seems to give you problems because do you confirm a complete conclusion about what you just said about not performing complete conclusions?
Well, I understand that I can be wrong. I'm infallible. Okay. I understand that information gets updated. and becomes more and more accurate. So I'm never gonna like take something and say, well, I know that to be 100% fact, unless I've kind of personally tested it and confirmed it against, what I would consider reality.
Okay. Well, let's try this because you brought up a word, infallible. And would you say that if you could be wrong about something, you could still know it?
If you're wrong about something, you know it.
No. If you could be wrong.
If you could be wrong about something, you still know it.
Would you agree with that?
If I could be wrong about something, I still know it. Well, I wouldn't know what the thing actually. Oh, okay. So you're not assuming that I am wrong, just that I could be wrong.
Correct.
Well, okay. I would test if I was wrong.
Right, but like you said, you can't.
Is my answer?
Yeah, you said.
Go ahead. Sorry, go on. No, I don't want to, straw man your questions. I'd like you to lay out your logical argument so I can make sure I answer it correctly.
Yeah, so because you said that you couldn't come to complete conclusions about everything because that's not how the scientific method works. So there's always something you could have gotten wrong, or there could be information that you don't have that makes your current conclusion wrong. So that's why you don't come to like absolute conclusions, right?
It's why, it's why I understand that, science is a progression. It's an ever evolving thing that allows us to constantly test the universe and refine our understanding based on new findings.
So then my question is, if you could be wrong about something, do you still know that thing?
Yeah, I have to know the thing to understand if I'm wrong about it or not. But I can know of a thing and I can be wrong about how that thing operates. But then I would learn how that thing operates.
Maybe as an example, I'm sure there's streets that you drive by around your house that have certain speed limits. Some of them, like the back of your hand, and others, like you might get pulled over and be like, oh, I was doing 40, but what's the speed limit on this road? I think it could have been 35, but I could be wrong. Does that seem like you would know it?
I let my car tell me what the speed limit is.
That's actually a great feature.
Yeah. And because mine links to the Google Maps and it literally updates exactly what it should be. And on my electric car, I've got a button that will automatically reduce down to the speed limit. So, yeah.
But before we had this fancy technology and these cool cars, I'm sure you've been in a situation like that or similar before.
My brain works in a way that I wouldn't allow myself to be in that circumstance. I get what you're saying, if I didn't know, but me personally, if I'm going somewhere, I'm going to map that out in my head 1 billion times and make sure that I know what each bit says. But yeah, okay. there could be circumstances where I've got it wrong.
Yeah. And so in those circumstances,
I have been pulled over.
Yeah. In those circumstances, would you have known the speed limit?
I would have thought I'd known the speed limit and I was incorrect. But that's the wonderful thing about science, is that you can correct yourself. And the wonderful thing about knowledge as well is that, you can update your knowledge and it becomes more correct.
Right. Okay. And this is the last example I'll give on this. This is like the crazy example, but it works. So let's say you were playing the lottery, which I don't suggest to people. I mean, if it's a couple bucks, who cares? Have fun. But it's not meant to make people rich. It's meant to make the government money. Anyway, if you had 1 billion people playing the lottery, each ticket was $1. You can only buy one ticket. So 1 ticket per person, 1 billion people. And your ticket has a number on it. And then let's say on Friday morning, they're going to draw the ticket. On Thursday night, or Friday morning, they're going to announce it. Thursday night, they draw the ticket. So Thursday night comes around, they draw the ticket. The person who organizes it sees the ticket. They know what the winning ticket is. They put it in an envelope. Actually, no, they don't look at it. They don't know. They put it in an envelope. So nobody knows the winning ticket, but it has been drawn. Then they put the envelope to the side for Friday morning. If you bought a ticket, there's a 1 in a billion shot that you have the winning ticket. But you assume, I just bought this for fun. I know I'm going to lose. Do you actually know it?
Well, no, I wouldn't think like that. I would think, oh, I've got a tiny chance and I'll check in the morning.
Okay, so hypothetically, if someone else bought the ticket and they were like, man, I know I'm going to lose, so I believe I'm going to lose. It's justified if I lose because
I bet I wouldn't say it's a justified belief though, because it's not something they could be sure of or that's been tested. It's not a justified belief because some people have bought lottery tickets and won, right?
Okay.
So
Well,
for
yeah,
for that person to say that they know they're going to lose, that's more kind of just a person being a downer and, maybe, just trying to be like, oh, I know I'm going to lose. So it doesn't, if they win, it's a shock or anything. But my brain personally doesn't work that way. If I buy a lottery ticket, I'm actually excited. And then the next day I check it and I go, bugger. I don't know that I'm going to lose. I see what you mean. There's people that are pessimistic, right? And they're gonna go and buy a ticket and they're gonna go, oh, that was bloody pointless. I just wasted fucking £2. And there's no way I'm gonna win.
Yeah.
And they think that they know that. Okay. But here's the wonderful thing: knowledge can be wrong.
Whoa. I think what you mean by that is that you can think that you know something, but not actually know it.
Yeah. What you consider knowledge, right? You can be wrong. Right. That person in their head, they had the knowledge, right? Do you agree with this premise that the person in their head, they considered for them that they had the knowledge that they weren't going to win?
No, I would say like what you said earlier, that they considered it knowledge, but the reason it's not knowledge is because it's not actually true.
Yeah, there's no way of knowing it's true until the next day, right?
Right, but you can only consider something knowledge if it's true. It's justified true belief.
Yeah. But for them, right, so justified is the important word here, right? And I think for certain people, there's different levels of what they would consider justified. For that person that is, say, a naturally pessimistic person, maybe because they've had a lot of crappy things go wrong in their life, for them, they could completely consider saying, I'm never going to win, a justified belief based on the pattern of how their life has gone, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not completely true because we know other people have got the tickets and won. People's perception of knowledge can be very different based on their own feelings, which for me is a problem of saying how knowledge comes from God, when people are able to basically alter their own perception of knowledge based on their feelings.
Gotcha. So the reason I gave the example is because in your example with your senses being reliable, you said you perform a scientific experiment using the scientific method, and you have that's how you know that your senses are reliable because of these tests. But you also say that science isn't absolute. We don't need absoluteness. So what would, if you could, I know it's a weird question, but if you could put a percentage on it, like what percentage of that hypothetical test would it be that your senses are reliable? 80%, 90%, higher?
Well, that's the point of the test.
Okay,
is to confirm what percentage I'm not going to say beforehand what I think. I'm going to make a prediction and then test that prediction and go, oh, well, that prediction showed that my senses were actually 100% correct. I'm not going to just make an assumption beforehand. I'm going to hope that they're right, and I'm going to go, yeah, I really want them to be that, but I wouldn't say for sure or even, give an answer if it shows that they work and they work.
Yeah. I'm saying, so because you said there's still room for error, even if the test says your senses are 100% reliable because of the way science works. I can't say that that's absolutely true. I just what percentage, if it's not absolute, is what I'm asking.
Right. Okay. Let me give you an example to answer that if I can. I don't think I can answer it in percentage. Do you mind if I kind of do it a different way?
Yeah. Let's see if that works.
So, we've got receptors in our eyes that allow us to see certain things, right?
Yep.
Now, to say my senses work completely well, I would say I would need to be able to see all colors, right? But I can't see all colors. There's areas of the visual spectrum that I can't see. Now, does that mean that my senses are unreliable because I can't see all of the colors, or are they reliable for the things that I need them for?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, so it would it'd be depending on what your standard for reliability is.
Exactly. That's a really good point. Okay, we need to actually set what our standard of reliability is. For humans, we don't need to perceive infrared or ultraviolet, right?
Right.
We perceive the visible spectrum that we see because that allows us to reliably navigate our world around us. And we know it's reliably because we can navigate the world around us. You know, it's something we can physically test if it works, but they don't perceive all of the light. You know, there are other species on Earth that do. Does that mean they're more reliable than us? No, only in certain circumstances. Our senses are reliable for what we need them for.
Okay. And then, so that statement, our senses are reliable for what we need them for. You are saying that the scientific method with these tests produced that statement, right?
That would be a hypothesis that we could test for sure.
Okay. Now, if, like, you're not saying that's absolutely 100% true. It's some degree less than that. Maybe it's 99.99%, right?
What, as in that your eyes are reliable?
Yes.
Again, the statement that our eyes are reliable is a relative one. You know, that's what I'm trying to get across here. For what we need, our eyes are reliable. Maybe mine not completely. I need glasses. You know, they can go wrong, and I think I'm going to need a hearing aid as well. But for what I need to be able to do to exist in this world, my eyes are reliable.
I understand. And maybe it's not a good example to use. So let's just say any scientific experiment. The end result of these scientific experiments are never 100%. There's always some degree that they could be wrong, right? Any scientific experiment.
Well, yeah, that's why we do the scientific experiments,
right.
to you know, right.
So this is where
hold on. The way you phrased that was a little troubling to me, because saying an experiment is wrong isn't really the right vernacular.
I wanted to say
the experiment is a test of a prediction,
right?
That you have to be able to, you know, the experiment isn't the right thing unless it's doing its job. Then, you know, if it's an experiment, it's working. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah. So, but then we make a conclusion based on our experiments, right? And I'm not trying to get back to our earlier
semantics.
point.
I guess this is just semantics with conclusion versus my way of speaking, which is saying failed to falsify a hypothesis. Yeah, we can consider that a conclusion, but there's a door open for, you know, extra bits of that conclusion to come in to chance. Like, for instance, if we want to look at gravity quickly, right? Newton, he had the conclusion that there was an attractive force between masses, and that you could calculate this based on Fg equals gm1 m2 over r squared, right? That's a correct conclusion. That works. However, Einstein came along and gave us a lot more of the puzzle, a lot more accuracy, a lot more explanation. It doesn't mean that Newton's conclusion, or, you know, his failure to falsify a hypothesis was wrong. We just now have a more accurate description. So, you know, it's all about relative to what you're talking about.
I understand. And the reason why I was using that example and trying to connect all of this is here. In that example, you're saying that the person can't know that they have a losing ticket because there is a 1 in a billion chance.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that if that's the same for scientific conclusions or conclusions about scientific experiments, then you actually can't know the conclusions of those scientific experiments either.
Why?
Because there's a 1 in a billion chance you could be wrong about it.
That's why I don't say conclusion. That's why I say a failure to falsify a hypothesis. But that's the language I like to use, because that leaves it open for more information to come along. Yeah, I might have failed to falsify a hypothesis, but it doesn't mean I've got a complete explanation for what's going on. You know,
So,
but it doesn't mean that you were wrong about that little bit. It just means that the statement might not have been entirely accurate. But I mean, Wi-Fi gospel, let's just be clear. None of this shows that we need a God. All of these
Well-
are developed by people and observations and testing. None of that requires a God. If we were to just say that we started right this second, we popped into existence for whatever reason, but it's just the way the universe exists and there is no deity, it would be no different. We could still do the things that we do. We don't need a God for us to exist. The universe exists as it is. We can calculate and predict based on how it is. God is just an assumption.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that the hypothetical you gave of this universe existing exactly the way it is without a deity, that's an impossible hypothetical. That's the argument I'm trying to make. And the reason we did this whole thing about the example and the 1 in a billion chance that you could be wrong means you don't have knowledge of it is because this shows that your example of using your senses to know things, would you say that you could use your senses to know something, but still have a 1 in a billion chance of being wrong about the thing that's based on your senses?
Well, yeah, you can always be wrong about something.
Right.
For instance, my senses, right, will tell me that I'm getting burnt, when in fact my hand is being frozen, right? The senses tell me the same thing.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever suffered ice burn.
Unfortunately, I have not. Have you?
Yeah, I
Oh,
haven't,
man,
and
that's
it's quite
terrible.
bad, and it literally feels like you're on fire, even though it's the opposite. Your
Wow.
senses are telling you that it's burning, but it's not. Does that mean that your senses are wrong, or are they doing the job of letting you know that you've been damaged? Are they still reliable in that circumstance?
Yeah, and again, that goes back to our standard of reliability, right?
Right, but even though they're wrong, they're still reliable, right?
That's a tough one because what's the evolutionary story? You probably know more about this of like we have an instinct of flight or fight, and we tend to like if we hear a shake in the bushes while we're peeing, the instinct is to run because if it's a predator, then we need to run right away, right? So like even if it's less likely that it's a predator, it's still instinctual to run because the consequences are so devastating if we are wrong about that.
Yeah, it's evolutionary. Almost, I want to say like genetic memory, really. Like you see a little slivery bastard, and you're going to run away because that snake, that tiny little snake, could actually kill you quite easily. It is, it's a fight or flight reaction that's evolved because our species wants to survive. Yeah.
So reliable for survival, but not reliable for truth.
Yeah, and that's almost how I would describe our senses, right? Our senses are there to stop us dying, right?
Yeah.
We see the amount we do so that we don't walk into things. We have the sense of heat and stuff so that we know when there's danger around. We can hear things, so that we can determine what's going on. But they're there to do a job to keep us safe. It doesn't mean that they know exactly what is happening.
Okay. So if there's no reliability, so reliability for survival doesn't guarantee reliability for truth, then that would mean that just like in my example of the lottery, even if that non-guarantee was 1 in a billion for the reliability of truth, you wouldn't be able to know that your senses are reliable, and you wouldn't be able to know things based on empiricism on your senses.
Well, again, we have to look at what the jobs of the things are. My senses can tell me certain things empirically that allow me to survive.
Okay, so like let's say something that's true that allows you to survive. Like you're walking across a field, you haven't eaten in a few days, and you see some form of food. And it's true that food's right there, it's edible, you go and you eat it. That was reliable for truth and survival, right? But could you have
Not
seen
necessarily.
All right, well, my question
depends on that comes down to depends on what you've eaten, to be fair.
Right.
Your senses might be like, well, that's food, I need that to survive. But what if you've eaten, a death cap or something?
Yeah.
So
then it kind of it kind of makes my point though, what you're saying, because like there's always this chance you could be wrong. Always. Even honestly, that would not be, like you said, it wouldn't be reliable for survivability if you saw the food and it was a death cap.
And here's the thing, right? That for me goes against the existence of God. Because if there was a God, then our senses wouldn't only do what they do. They would allow us to have absolute truth. If there was a God that intelligently designed us in a way that allows us to exist perfectly on this earth, then we wouldn't have this hodgepodge of evolutionary hang-ups which allow us to bundle our way through the world and somehow not die.
Well, I would think, yeah, I think you would be right, but my instinct is, well, maybe you have the wrong God. Maybe a God intelligently designed us purposefully with flaws.
Okay, and that is something that I cannot disprove, right? And I want to make it very clear, right? I will never be able to disprove that there's a God, because that's something that is not testable, it's not provable, right? I can't prove that in 20 years I don't invent a time machine, go back and start the Big Bang and set up the universe as it is. You know, there's no way to disprove that until 20 years time, and I don't invent a time machine. But you know what I mean? There's no way that me, you, or anyone could ever disprove the concept of a God. But there's also no way to prove that there is a God, which is why this debate is kind of impossible for you, because everything you have to do is just based on a premise of, well, it needs a God. But there is just no evidence for the God apart from your circular reasoning of, well, I think that's what knowledge requires. But we've gone through this back and forth a lot, explaining how knowledge, and I think you've agreed with me, is just kind of an extension of evolution almost.
Well, it seems like what you said about there's no way to disprove God, that's a universal negative claim, just like God is not real is a universal negative claim.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say it's a negative claim. It's kind of the opposite. I can't disprove God. I'm not saying that that's
a negative.
It's not saying that something is wrong or you're against something. I'm just saying that I don't have a way to prove God. There is no. It's not like I'm trying to prove a negative or something. The statement itself is a indication of a failure to do a thing, rather than a negative premise that I am putting forward. Nobody can disprove a God. Nobody can prove a God.
Well, I do think
those are just universal truths. We can presuppose and want there to be a God and hope that a God is the reason knowledge exists as much as we want. But there is no way that either of us could win this debate, because neither of us could ever actually show our position to be 100% true. I don't think there's a God. You do. Neither of us have a way to prove that.
Well, it's weird because you kind of seem to say that about every position, that you can't prove any position to be 100% true.
No, it's very different. With science, you can falsify a hypothesis. Okay, that's something you can't do with God exists. That if the hypothesis is that God exists, there isn't a way to test that. There isn't a way that we can say God made the universe, so if I predict something and then test that to go and see if it's true. That's what I mean by there's no way of disproving it. In science, there is ways of disproving hypotheses, disproving ideas. For God, there's no way of disproving the existence of God, but in the same way, there's no way of prove that God exists. All I can do is show that the universe exists as it does and that no deity is necessary. And let's be honest, that's as much as an assumption as your side, as there is a deity necessary, right?
Well, I disagree only based on the argument that I made, because the argument I made was a necessary precondition, that God is a necessary condition. So like there are some things that you believe, like we talked about earlier, that aren't testable.
To be fair though, isn't your God is a necessary thing? That's just an assumption. You assume that it's necessary.
It would be if it wasn't justified.
But it's not justified.
And that's the argument
you're assuming it's just. but you're assuming it's justified just because you say God exists.
No,
But I think we have both come to the conclusion that knowledge is a collection of experiences.
no, I wouldn't
Right?
say. I mean, I thought we agreed that knowledge was justified true belief.
Yeah, which comes from a collection of experiences.
Well, the collection of experiences are like the colloquial way of using knowledge.
Yeah, right. But
Yeah.
a collection of experiences doesn't require a deity. It requires me to have experiences.
Well, that's an assumption that for you, in order for you to have experiences, a deity isn't needed. The assumption is you got here without a deity.
No, the assumption is that a deity was made. A deity is what gave me. I'm just saying, well, I disagree with your assumption of there's a deity. That's not an assumption. That's disagreeing with your assumption. Because let's remember, the title of the debate is, does God exist?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the assumption that we are going with. And so I'm not making another assumption. I'm just disagreeing with your assumption that God exists.
Right, but you're also saying we're here. So it's almost like, and I know it's not one-to-one because of the words I'm using, but it's almost like eggs are a necessary precondition of an egg omelet. And it's like, obviously, switch it out with God and knowledge. And you're saying in this situation, eggs are just an assumption. But I'm saying, but if we have an egg omelet, we have eggs, right?
Well, yeah, but again, right, we know that eggs exist because we can get them out of chickens.
Exists.
But we know eggs exist because we can hold them and we can get them out of chickens. We don't know God exists because that is just an assumption. Well, there's nothing to, you can't go and hold God. You can't test God. You can't say God is definitely the reason for that. But what we can say, 100% certainty, is that the reason I got an omelet is because that chicken laid an egg. They are not the same in the slightest. One has empirical evidence that you can watch and test repeatedly. The other is just a belief that isn't justified.
So this all goes back to what I said earlier about believing things that aren't testable, like the concept of truth.
Yeah, but what is testable is that
you can't hold the concept of truth.
Yeah, but what is testable is that a chicken will give an egg. That's something that is testable, right? And we know that when the chicken gives the egg, we can take that egg and make an omelet from it if you're good enough at cooking. The amount of people I know that can't make an omelet is crazy. Whereas God is required for knowledge is just a statement with assumptions baked into it. There's no assumptions required in you need an omelet for an egg because you have to literally go and get the egg. Yours is, just a presuppositional, assumption of a thing, therefore a thing. And it's never going to be anything more than that. However many times you go round with the circular reasoning, it's always going to be just that.
But there actually are tons of assumptions that we make even when we go to grab an egg from a chicken and make an egg omelet. For example, one of those assumptions is induction. We believe that the next egg that's going to come out of a chicken is going to be an egg that we can make an omelet out of and not an egg that's a mini hydrogen bomb.
Well, chickens don't have the biological capacity to make a mini hydrogen bomb.
Right. And the reason they don't is also... Go ahead.
It is because of biology, right?
Right. And what
we know is what we know is based on the chicken's biology, we can make predictions that at certain times they will give eggs because, they're doing what the biology says that they can do. And again, that's something we can test. And with a physical thing in the world, it's always going to be something that we can test. But your assumption of God, therefore knowledge, is nothing that you can test. So, it's just an assumption. It's always going to be an assumption. It's not an assumption that the chicken's eggs are a thing that the biology of the chicken says will happen.
Well, so
yes, it's an assumption that the chicken will definitely give another egg, but it's not an assumption that the biology of the chicken says that an egg should happen.
Well, two things here. You keep saying that I'm making assumptions with the God argument. And I'm going back to the fact that there are similar arguments like about laws of logic and the concepts of truth that aren't making assumptions. And they do the same thing. They're necessary preconditions for knowledge that we don't need to test empirically in order to know about or to know that they are
here's
true.
The thing. You are making them necessary conditions because of your preconceived notions of there must be a God, right? Just because you can make a necessary, hold on, just because you can make a necessary condition doesn't mean that necessary condition is true.
Right, but if we agree that knowledge is a justified true belief, those are three conditions of knowledge that are necessary.
Yeah, but none of that means that God is a thing.
But
It never goes back to, well, then God, ever.
But
every single bit of knowledge can exist without a deity needed.
when
we exist as we are right now, and we have knowledge based on our experiences, based on our collection of experiences. There is no God needed for that. It is just an assumption.
But didn't you just make a bunch of assumptions when you said we exist as we are right now?
No, that's I exist as I am right now. That's not an assumption. It's not an assumption that I have pins holding my leg together and I am in constant agony every second of every day. That is not an assumption. That is something I know for a fact because I experience it.
Right, but you're assuming based on the law of identity that the Craig you are right now is the Craig you were 3 seconds ago when you made that statement.
It's definitely the same Craig. I have gained some experience, but I'm still the same Craig.
Well, yeah, just saying that though isn't a justification.
Well, no, it is because I'm the same Craig. My tattoo didn't change. I've definitely still got my Star Trek tattoo, and I've definitely still got the tattoo on my chest. I'm still the same Craig. That didn't change. There's no assumption there. My body is what it is. Some of my skin flakes came off. In a little way, I am a slightly different Craig because I've lost some skin cells. I have metabolized some of the food that I've given and converted it into energy. I am a slightly different being, but the Craig still exists. He's up here.
Okay. And you're also still assuming that the law of non-contradiction still holds.
That's an assumption that's needed, really. Again,
really?
I am a physical thing.
Yeah.
That's all that matters, right? Anything that is physical, you can test. God is not something that is ever testable. And this is all this comes down to. What is testable and what is not? The universe around us is testable. Things in nature are testable. Matter and energy is testable. Okay. What is not testable is God.
And the laws of logic.
No, in the laws of anything, in the laws of science, in logic, in any way, shape, or form, God is not something that is testable. Therefore, it is and always will be an assumption.
Okay. So all those laws then are assumptions too, right?
The laws of physics aren't an assumption. No, they're something that's testable.
How do you test a law of physics?
Make a prediction. We've gone through this. You use the scientific method. Law of physics, number one. Let's go with the first law of thermodynamics. No energy can be created or destroyed. You can test that with a particle accelerator and seeing what happens, and the fact that there is no energy created or destroyed. It just becomes other forms.
But that's only a particular example. A law is universal.
Yes, it was a particular example of a particular law, yes. And any law in science is something that has been tested and corroborated over and over again.
Are the laws universal?
Is Newton's universal law of gravitation universal? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So in order to test a universal, you have to test it everywhere at the same time.
Incorrect.
Well, if you only have particulars, how do you get from a bunch of particulars to the universal?
You can make predictions about what you will see and just test those predictions. You don't have to test the entire universe. You can say, right, if what we're saying is true, in this particular area of the sky, we should see this thing. And then go and see if you see that thing. Oh, look, that matched the predictions. You know what? Let's test another area of the sky and another area of the sky and another area of the sky. We're testing more and more and more areas of the sky thanks to the James Webb Space Telescope. And every single time it confirms what we understand about, the laws of the universe. So these are testable things, but anything to do with God is not testable. And that's what I want you to understand. That's the only thing that matters to me is what is testable and what isn't. God is never and can never be testable.
You're just talking about particulars. The universal law itself is not testable. You're just testing particular instances of what you call the universal law.
Yeah, that's how you do testing. And what we find is whenever we look in the universe, it matches the laws.
Okay.
Every single time. Right? So and if we found something that didn't match what our laws was, we would go back to the drawing board and we say, okay, well, we need to come up with a new hypothesis and a new prediction and a new test because
So it
we were
is
clearly
possible,
wrong
though.
about something. Oh, it's always possible to be wrong. That's the
Right.
point. But you have to have something that is testable to be wrong. And what you're not getting here, Wi-Fi Gospel, is God is not testable.
Well, and I'm trying to show you that just because something isn't testable, like you can't put it in a test tube, then it doesn't mean you shouldn't believe it or that it's not true. But
Well, that's exactly what it means. If you cannot test it, then there's no reason to believe it. If you cannot test it and make sure that it functions the way that it should and that it matches predictions, then there's no reason you should believe in it.
But you just said
because
testing.
you say something, just because you say something exists doesn't mean you should believe in it. Like,
Right. I agree with that.
There's no difference between the tooth fairy and God.
Well,
right?
there is a
Both
major
of them,
difference.
No, there's not. Both of them are untestable things.
Right, but just because something is untestable doesn't mean it's not real. But look,
But there's no way to show it's real without testing it, though. That's the thing.
All right,
that
then you
is the
shouldn't believe in the
precondition
laws
of knowing
of
if something is real. That's a precondition for knowing if something is real, is its ability to be tested. God,
Okay.
This is a yes or no question. Can you test God?
In an empirical sense, no.
Right. Well, therefore, you cannot prove that God exists.
Okay. Can you test the law of non-contradiction in an empirical sense?
That's not science. I do science.
Okay, so then the law of non-contradiction is not real.
The law of non-contradiction is something that we've made up.
Okay, so this is really,
right.
really...
The law of non-contradiction is not the same as Newton's law of gravitational attraction. One is an empirical fact about the universe. Another is a concept that humans have developed.
Did we create the concept or discover it?
We literally created the concept of non-contradiction.
Okay, so can we change it?
If we want, if we find that it's wrong. But that's the thing.
Wait.
That's the entire point. That is the entire point, right? You are conflating scientific laws with logical laws, and you can't do that.
Well,
scientific laws are testable. Logical laws are just things that we have developed to try and have coherent conversations, but they don't always hold up. And it's just it's presuppositionalism wrapped in an attempt to make it a modus ponens, to stick your conclusion into your premise of God is what we need for knowledge, when that is something we can never ever test or reliably even look at logically, because it's a circular reasoning.
But you just said logically.
I will give you guys a 2-minute warning really quick.
Okay. You just said logically. The last point I want to make is, with the laws of logic, the law of non-contradiction has to be true in order for anything to be true, because of the principle of explosion. The principle of explosion states that from a contradiction, anything is true. And so, like, if I say that not A and A are both true at the same time in the same place, then no matter what I affirm, it's always true. So therefore, if there's no law of non-contradiction, the principle of explosion states everything I say is true, which means everything is meaningless because nothing is true if everything is true. So we couldn't make it different.
That was literally just word babble that does not relate to reality. Okay, the problem is that you are looking at the world through an entirely, I want to set out a logical argument stance, but that's not the way the world works. The world and the universe works based on predictions and science, and we can predict something and test against it, and you can try and make all the logical arguments and circular reasonings that you like. It is never ever going to change the fact that we cannot test for God. There is no proof for a God. There will never be any proof for a God beyond some kind of sophism about logic that is ending up being circular reasoning, no matter how much you disagree with it. Sorry, but that's all you've got, circular reasoning.
Last question for you, does the scientific method have to be logical?
Does it have to be logical?
In order to work?
It has to follow a set of rules.
Does it have to be logical?
Logic is a separate thing to science. It might not appear logical to many people, but it's a set of rules set out to give you instructions how to test the world.
Do those rules have to be logical?
If you if they were to make sense, then yes.
Okay, thank you.
But again, logic is something that we have created. The scientific method is something that we have created. But the physical world, not, the laws that exist within science, laws of thermodynamics, laws of gravity, they're not things we created. They're things that exist.
Exist in what sense? How do they exist?
They are what decides what happens in the universe. The law of universal gravitational attraction decides when that goes down.
Yeah, and what's the ontology of that law?
It does. The law came from observations.
Right. So you observed particular instances and made up and said that this is a universal law.
More than that, there was a lot of tests to confirm. Based on Newton made the observation that mass attracted mass, did a lot of calculations and tests and confirmed that mass attracts mass with, FG equals gm1 m2 over r squared. That's something that is empirical and testable and is the opposite of God.
And it just seems to me lots of particulars extrapolated out to a universal doesn't mean that it's universal.
Well, then you're missing the entire point of being able to test something. We're not claiming that things are always completely exactly universal, but our hypothesis has failed to be falsified at the moment. If you have a falsification of the hypothesis that universal law of gravitation means that every bit of mass is attracted to every bit of mass in the universe, then it would be your burden to present that evidence that that hypothesis is incorrect.
Well, saying something is not absolutely universal and then also saying every bit of mass is attracted to every bit of mass seems contradictory.
Again, you missed what I just said. We are saying that that's what our hypothesis is, and that's what our prediction is, but we don't know 100% that's what the case is, right? But at the moment, we have failed to falsify it. It might not be universal, but at the moment, we failed to falsify that it's universal. All of our tests, and all of our observations, and all of our calculations show that every single bit of matter in the universe attracts every other bit of matter in the universe. That is something that has failed to be falsified at the moment. Might be later on, we don't know.
This might be a good opportunity to jump into the Q&A, folks. If you happen to have questions, feel free. I would say we have a pretty good amount. Most of them are insults toward Wi-Fi gospel, but so those I'm going to read through fast because they're just, you guys are sick and you just want to pay to have somebody read an insult to somebody else.
I have thick skin. Send James as much money as you possibly can to insult me because you won't call me up to say it.
They're insulting you. I normally get the insults on this channel.
That's true. But tonight there's 1 over and squared has come after Wi-Fi gospel. Some of these are brutal. I feel bad about reading some of these. But first, this is the one I feel worst about. They say, modern day debate, were you relieved that the Washington, D.C. sandwich guy who threw his sub at a Fed was not indicted on a felony? Nowadays, now subways can be used as weapons. I was only mad that he would waste Subway. That's what he should have been locked up for. Oh, the other one. Now, this is where this guy's got some. Do you know who this 1 over and squared is? Wi-Fi gospel. Do they taunt you at your own channel?
I don't get many taunts at my own channel. Yeah.
The other thing is, I don't know what this guy I'm gonna read it, but I'm like, I don't see how this makes you look better or how it makes your side not look worse. They say Wi-Fi gospel. Oh, it sounds terrible. They say, did your deity intend for you to be obese? They say,
come on.
Modern day debate. Can you give Wi-Fi some tips? Let's see. He looks like he needs it on physical fitness. This person's so. I'm like, are they trying to make people like Wi-Fi gospel's position more? These are meaner. Anyway, don't worry,
James
Craig,
is in great shape and could probably give me some awesome tips. I just lack consistency. I played a bunch of sports in high school. I was in really good shape in high school. I got married really young. I got 3 kids, and it's just hard to do everything all at once. But I mean, you're right. I need to lose weight. Everybody needs to be healthy.
Yeah. Hey, dude. Right. Wi-Fi gospel. So 3 years ago, I was probably way heavier than you are.
Wow.
dude. I was close to 20 plus stone, and I've worked really hard over the past few years, and I'm literally half the man that I used to be, and I'm 42. All right, I've gone back to the gym at my age, and I'm probably happier with my body now than I've ever been. So it doesn't matter. Yeah, you're married, you've got 3 kids now, but it's never too late to, get to the gym and eat properly. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think I'm living proof of even a cripple can do it.
I appreciate that, dude. I have a boxing bag to my left and a whole bench set up to my right. So I really
man.
Yeah. I need
Do
to
you know
stop
also
the excuses.
that people that lift weights for an hour 3 times a week reduce risk of heart disease, of any kind of heart disease, by 98%?
Wow. 98. That's crazy.
Yeah.
This one coming in from JSS Tiger says, to the Christian, they're not even going to identify you by name. Would you be fine if your God was a lie, but Lord Xenu, the Galactic Emperor, was the actual creator?
If you, because one thing that didn't come up tonight that does come up a lot. I mean, I think Craig's might have said it once, but they say that you can replace, in this argument, you can replace God with any God. That's true to an extent. In my argument, you could replace God with any God that meets the requirements that's necessary for being a necessary condition for the possibility of knowledge, such as creating us and the world in order to know things, right? That's kind of the bare minimum. There is much more you can get into and deeper to figure out which God that is, but that wasn't for this stream. A lot of people I know who run these arguments do start with the Christian God, and some specifically even the Orthodox Christian God, and they make arguments from the energies essence distinction. I'm not Orthodox yet. I'm an inquirer. I'm not even really allowed to go into those debates right now, but I try to stay away from it for now. But Jay Dyer, Father Deacon Ananias make those arguments.
This one from Maryland says, I have to read it. This is maybe the most annoying super chat. They say, we are all gods because of God, kings and queens. Everything should be free. I swear that's a bot, but why would a bot spend money on a super chat? JSS Tiger says, 1 over and squared. This, do I have to read? I will read it because I made the promise. They say, Wi-Fi, when did you receive your revelation? I think they mean revelation. And was it while you were standing in front of the fridge? These people
Oh, come on.
are so low.
That was kind of funny.
They say, when the fit Christian nationalists take over, will you be able to run away? They say Wi-Fi.
Interestingly enough, oh, go ahead, finish it.
Let's see. They say, do you always supersize at McDonald's? I don't understand. They say Wi-Fi needs a cookie. You should take a break.
Let me just say,
that was their last one.
Okay. My wife has been amazing. So I used to do all the grocery shopping. We spent like $150 a week, which isn't terrible for a house of 5. But I would buy just all crap because I'm like cheap, right? And then my wife was like, whoa, what are we doing here? Now she spends about $200. We get about half the food, but it's all amazing organic food, and I do feel a ton better eating that stuff. But I was a lineman in high school, right? There are NFL linemen who are 3 times my size and twice as fast as me. You'd be very surprised how quick I could be. So just saying.
True. Marilyn says, oh, we got that one. JSS Tiger says, that one. Moto Gear. Issa Kabir. Ugh. Maybe even more annoying. They say steel man the other's positions in 2 sentences, let's say. Maybe 3 sentences if you need it.
Yeah, do you want to go first? You want me to?
You can go first.
I think that Craig's position here is simply that if God were real, we would have tangible evidence, or at least a testable hypothesis to run through something like the scientific method. If we don't have that, then all of these other methods of proving his existence aren't at least convincing to him, and maybe don't work at all.
Not quite. It's more that I hold the position that I don't know if there's a God or not, because there is no way to test for it.
Okay.
Okay, so your position is that your prerequisite for knowledge existing is that God is real, and God exists because knowledge is possible.
In a sense, yeah.
This one coming in from,
And you don't see how that's not circular?
Well, it's not because it's a conditional statement, right?
It's a conditional statement that
if knowledge
includes
is
its
possible
premise in its conclusion.
Well, if knowledge is possible, God exists. Knowledge is possible, therefore God exists. The reason it's not, so question begging is a type of like informal fallacy. So you wouldn't see it
Yeah.
within the validity of the premises. So it would be how I connect the conditional statement in premise one. And that's where the true dichotomy comes in. And I don't want to, you don't have to go and rehash all of this, but that's why it's not circular, is because of the way I justify it is with the true dichotomy.
But it doesn't stop it being a circular argument that contains its conclusion within its premise.
Well, so saying it literally has the conclusion in the premise it seems to me like a misunderstanding of modus ponens.
Well,
because
you
that
can
would
dress it up
make
as modus ponens all you like. It doesn't stop the conclusion existing within your premise.
Well, let's
It's
talk about it real
literally-
quick.
It's literally a circular argument. It's a circle. You could draw it in a circle with lines connecting each one. And yes, you can call it modus ponens, but you can call anything modus ponens, and it still be a circular argument. And you can lay anything out in a logical way in a modus ponens argument, but it doesn't stop it containing a conclusion that's in the premise.
Well, in a valid sense, it does. Like I don't literally have my premise in my conclusion. That would make the argument invalid. Something could be
your conclusion is in your premise, though. Your conclusion,
not in the sense that you're talking about.
Right. So your conclusion is God exists because knowledge is possible, right?
Right. Well, no.
And
the conclusion is just God exists.
But there has to be a reason for the conclusion.
Right.
Otherwise,
and that's
it's just an assumption.
Premise 1 and premise 2. So the inference, right? That's why modus ponens is called an inference rule, because the inference comes from the premises. You infer from the premises the conclusion.
Well, yeah, but then you have to infer that God exists because knowledge is possible from your conclusion.
Yeah, because it follows.
Well, yeah, that's why it's circular.
No.
You're right. Your premise is knowledge. We know knowledge exists because God exists, and because God exists, it means that knowledge is possible.
Let me just say this real quick.
Draw it in a circle. There's no way that it's not a circular argument. No matter how many times you dress it up as a modus ponens, the conclusion is included in the premise.
Okay, so if egg omelets exists, eggs exist. Egg omelets exist, therefore eggs exist.
That's still circular, no matter how many times you dress it up as modus ponens.
This one coming in from, you appreciate your question. It's from Bryce J. Says Wi-Fi Gospel wins because of the orthobro beard, and Fight the Flat Earth is a beta with that logic. GG's. Is it G? How do you say
There's
it
one
when they
for you? They're not all for me. See,
when they say GG, what is that?
That means good game.
Really?
Game.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you. This one from Dog Meat says, how do you test the scientific method?
How do you test the scientific method? The scientific method is what you use to test things. The test of the scientific method is the fact that it's worked, and you and I are talking over the internet when we are on different sides of the planet, really. But yeah, the scientific method is a set of rules that allow us to test a hypothesis. It's not something that you test itself. In fact, there's many versions of the scientific method depending on the industry or the particular area of science that you're doing. The scientific method is a malleable thing.
It seems like holding the standard then that you must test things with the scientific method in order to know if they're true wouldn't hold up, because you actually can't test the scientific method.
The scientific method is a set of rules. Okay. And the test, again, as I said, the test of that is the fact that we have developed technology and things from science.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it, Marilyn, says, We're all God. Cognitive dissonance. You idolize God. Thank you for that. Yonder
When are you going to
says,
have Marilyn up here for a debate?
I suspect that Marilyn is actually Martin. I don't believe Marilyn is the blonde Irish woman that Marilyn says. I didn't know women troll that much. Like I've never seen, she trolls more than a dude.
I see her everywhere.
Yonderstone says, any evidence for the existence of God? Just presuppositionalism?
Say that again. Sorry, I was thinking about Marilyn.
They say, you mean Martin? They say,
Yeah.
any evidence for the existence of God? Just presuppositionalism?
It does. This kind of really gets, yeah, that's why Craig said that, because it does get into the heart of what we're talking about today. I don't think it's fair to say that evidence is only empirical, right? A philosophical proof is literally that. It's proof. It's evidence for the truth of something, which I do believe that I provided today.
You got it. This one coming in from Yonder Stone. We got that one over in Square. It says modern day debate. Take a break. We got that one. Thank you. Cole Marshall says Wi-Fi. How are you defining exist? Where is God?
Yeah, so exist would just it's tough because if I no matter where you define the word exist, whether you're me or Craig, you're kind of in it's a circular definition, right? If you say that God is reality in a sense, whereas he has created all things, right? At the very bottom of every atom is God's word, for example. If you were to say something like that and define existence as what God has created or where God is, then that would be circular. But in the same sense, when you define existence as that which is real, it's a tautology.
You got it. This one coming in from Human says, if Wi-Fi gospel speaks, he is wrong. He speaks QED.
I'm not used to this. I normally get ripped apart with the super chats. What's going on?
What's the QED part?
I don't know. It's some sort of slang the youth are using. Craig, what does that mean?
QED is like, basically a full stop.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
But I don't think he was on a good point, but I don't think he made the full. I can't see the super chat. What does it say?
They said, if Wi-Fi gospel speaks, he is wrong. He speaks. I think they're saying,
right,
just because if you put something in a modens ponens.
Yeah, so here's the thing. That's not circular, right? I would simply ask, how do you connect the conditional statement in premise 1? And then they would have to have a follow-up argument, right? But the argument itself isn't circular, because if premise 1 is true, if I speak, then I lose. And then premise 2 is true, I speak. The conclusion would follow that I spoke, so I lost. That's not circular, but there needs to be an argument to connect the conditional statement.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it. JSS Tiger says, here's the Christian's argument. If grass is green, God exists. Oh, look, grass is green. Therefore, God. Derp.
It's the same thing, except, yeah, it lacks the connection of the conditional statement.
Over and under
But it
square.
is just as circular.
But I provided
Wi-Fi.
the connection of the conditional statement.
Says Wi-Fi, you seem like an expert in logic and deduction. A primal example of a logical proof is Euclid's proof that the number of primes is infinite. Can you describe this proof?
I am not an expert in logic. I do study a lot of epistemology, but like if you didn't tell me what Euclid's proof was, I couldn't name it. I'm not familiar with that.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Christian Mirabal said, we would be able to ask questions to the participants. Yes, you are. And they had a question eventually. They have a question coming up besides that one.
Did he just send a super chat to ask if he's allowed to send a super chat?
Yes.
Yeah.
This one from I don't know if he's trolling me. Kira Liv says testing your senses requires you to use your senses, Craig.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can make a prediction as to what our senses should show us. That's no problem. There's nothing circular about saying we're going to test our senses. You have to use your senses to test your senses, because that's what you're testing, is your senses. You can't test them without using them, because they need to be active to be tested.
Right,
You
but
got it.
In order for your test to produce reliable results, you're assuming that your senses are reliable.
Well, no, because we're making a prediction as to what our senses should give us.
Yeah, and in order to know if your experiment proves your prediction, you would have to use your senses, which means you would assume they're reliable enough to let you connect, to let you prove your hypothesis with the not conclusions, but the data that you get from the experiment.
Again, we just have to compare it to the prediction. That's all that matters.
Yeah, with your senses.
Yeah, and if they do what the prediction says, then it's all good.
This one coming in from Corey says, thanks for setting up such a great debate. I'm having a blast over here. I can't wait for DebateCon. Thanks for your kind words, Corey. And Craig will face off against his nemesis. For years, Witsit Gets It and Craig have been rivals. It's Craig's intellectual equal. They are.
Excuse, what did you just say about Witsit?
I just love that I could say that about you guys, and you both just get so pissed. That you guys, you don't want to miss it. Craig and Witsit at DebateCon. Grab tickets now. The discounted tickets are available until tomorrow. They're going away tomorrow night. So grab them now. Corey says, thank you for that. Christian says, over and under square, it says Wi-Fi. Do you think you'll end up in CCOT or sedan? What is, so CCOT, it's spelled C-E-C-O-T. What is CECOT in all caps?
They're saying I'm going to be a terrorist.
Okay.
Oh,
King Ginger.
come on, guys, that's not fair.
Listen, he's not TERRORIST,
Sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
far as we know.
No, they've
King-
got weight requirements, and he's a bit above that, right? No, joking, joking.
King
See, that
Giver-
was actually funny, guys. Learn from Craig.
King Ginger 333 says, Craig, do numbers only exist in our minds, or are they true no matter what? If not, then why does the Mandelbrot set exist?
Well, numbers are just our way of denoting, whatever little bits of things that there are. Mandelbrot sets exist because there are sets of things. We just apply numbers. It could be, the numbers are just the way we represent, gradations of things.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Now, 1 over and squared, he really has it in for you, Wi-Fi. He says, where did you take Philosophy 101? If was school, he might be drunk. Or university, please name.
No, this is a double-edged sword, right? When I say this, so I actually dropped out of high school because I went to work for my father's business at 17. And
That's fair enough.
So people will say, "They will, duh, look how bad. That's why he's a bad debater. He dropped out of high school." But then I always turn it on, and I say, "Well,
your
if you
high
can't
school
beat,
is different, though, right?"
We go up to 12th grade in high school.
Right. See, now there's nothing wrong. Okay, so with
Hold
you
on,
dropping out of school to go and
I
work,
want to hear
I'm just
the
saying.
rest of the story.
Sorry,
I
was just like, people that go against it is bad.
I turn it on and I say, "Well, how bad is it that you can't beat a high school dropout?" Right. So if you're gonna use it against me, I will use it back.
Yeah. So my son, who is just turning 17, he's finished what we would consider high school over here, but he's not continuing normal high school. He's going to train to be a chef instead.
Oh,
I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean he's stupid. He's done what we would consider high school over here, but he's got a thing that he wants to go and do. So no,
Gotcha. I got into a bad group of kids and stopped going to school. And my dad said, "You can stay here, but you got to get a job or just get out." I was like, "All right, I'll get a job." And I started working for him, learned a trade, and that's what I do now.
Fair enough.
This one coming in from Apollo's Christian Apologetics says, if you want to see Craig actually get destroyed, I encourage you all to watch my debate with him. The audience, including atheists, voted I won by far. The tag or transcendental argument, presuppositionalist argument is bad, to be honest. Wow, what a back.
Sorry, who was that?
Oh, that was Apollo's Christian Apologetics.
Oh, I barely even remember him. Yeah, I ruined him in debate. And yeah, of course the people on this channel tend to vote for you, but just, you know, you can just look at the people on my channel who all thought you were an apologetic asshole. You know, an apologist asshole, rather not an apologetic one, you know what I mean? Yeah, you know, if the left look at votes from the left, then the left think they're great. If the right look at votes from the right, then the right think they're great.
This one they say, prove God by asking him the winning lotto numbers. This is from JSS Tiger.
Didn't Chris Angel do that? So if Chris Angel can do it, that's not a good proof.
This one from 1 over and under squared says, Wi-Fi, are you a Bayesian? So
I think I know what that means.
They say, what is Bayes' rule? Please reframe the hypothesis that God exists in the Bayesian context, i.e., what is the prior?
Yeah, I know that Bayesian is like a form of or an ideology about probability and statistics. But I don't know. I'd have to have a conversation with that person to understand what they're trying to ask.
Over and under also said Wi-Fi's modern version of cogito ergo sum is, quote, it takes good, therefore God. I think they meant taste. I just realized how many super chats may come from drunk people. I think this guy, it makes sense of like why this guy is like so different. 1 over and under said, Wi-Fi, are you using a novel argument? If you are using a novel argument, how is it different than the arguments Augustine, Aquinas, and some Plantinga have made before?
I don't know too much about Augustine. Aquinas would never make a presuppositional argument because he believed in natural theology. So he actually holds the position that you can gain knowledge just from nature. You don't necessarily need God. Of course, he would say God created nature, but he would actually, that's why you see a lot of people who are Roman Catholics dislike tag in presuppositional apologetics, because it's very Thomistic. Or they're very Thomistic. And the third guy was Plantinga. Plantinga was a fallibilist, which is interesting being a Christian. He believes that you can't know anything for sure. So I don't know. They don't. It's not novel though. Sorry, one more. It's not novel. Bonson, Van Til, J. Dyer, Father Deacon Ananias. There's plenty of people who make these arguments.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Over and under square, it says Wi-Fi. Do you think that beard? If you think that beard looks good, did your deity tell you this?
Well,
he's got to be under the influence.
I
Let's
don't.
Not,
hey, at least he can grow a beard. I've not shaved for a week, right?
Let's not dignify it with a response.
All right,
Zuber
all
says,
right.
Wi-Fi, if God isn't testable, regardless if a God exists or not, does that make the belief in that God reasonable?
Yes, because I don't think that non-testable things aren't reasonable to believe in.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it, Simon Simple. Thanks for your super chat. Let me know if you had a question you want to attach to it. Otherwise, thanks for your support. And Solar Knight says, God only exists inside your head and books? ? There is no God in nature? ?
Is that after my Thomistic argument thing? I don't know. No, of course God. I mean, in the sense of like, is God's essence in nature? No. God created nature. I don't know what you mean by in it. Like, are you talking like Marilyn thinks that God is in nature and in all of us? No, not like that.
This one comes in from Over and Under Squared, strikes again. He's a nasty guy. Says, please explain Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Specifically, what domains do they apply to, as in Gödel's original proof?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard those words before. I don't know what they mean. And I'm not like here as like the philosophy expert that knows all things about the history of philosophy and all these niche things. Like I said, I've studied epistemology, and so I know a lot of the concepts within epistemology. That's why I end up talking about epistemology the most.
Zuver says, Wi-Fi, if God isn't testable, regardless if a God exists or does not exist, does that make the belief in that God reasonable? They're basically saying, if God isn't testable, does that make the belief in that God reasonable?
Right, it's the same one as like two super chats ago. No, because again, like even something as simple as human rights, right? If would you say it's not reasonable to believe in human rights because they're not testable? Of course you wouldn't.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Quick reminder, folks. DebateCon 6, discounted tickets right now. Don't wait. They're going to go away tomorrow night. This one from, and that's linked to the top of the description box and linked at the top of the chat. This is from Christian Mirabal, says to Craig, I'm not a full atheist because of the astronomical odds of our existence. Do you see the rare conditions in our solar system, namely a quiet sun, Jupiter's protection, as divine design or just luck?
Jupiter's
It's literally just cosmic coincidences. Our universe is vast and giant, and I'm sure these conditions exist in other places. Yes, there is small odds for Jupiter orbit being just right to keep a lot of asteroids away from us, and the odds of the sun being as it is with the Goldilocks zone being a right away to get the right heat and radiation. Yeah, the odds are quite small. The odds are quite small of the moon appearing roughly the same size as the sun in the sky. But coincidences don't mean God. They're just coincidences. It's simple as that, really.
This is next one from Jayub. Says Craig is suffering from circle phobia. Oh, I see. Because you said the
I'm not afraid of circles.
This one
I'm afraid of snakes.
This one from Philip Beretta says, Craig, you made a statement that we will never be able to test for God. There is science like string theory that we can't test yet. What if we just need to find the right tech or knowledge to test for God?
Well, we would need to be able to make a prediction to be able to test for God. And I'm pretty sure the Bible says things like we can never know the true nature of God. So that's just literally something that we wouldn't be able to test.
This one coming in from Pumpkin says, does Wi-Fi Gospel trust his sense of, here we go, of getting full? Wow. Now this is a new one. You guys, I think they have to be under the influence, because you guys, it's like when you're just like trying to, be like really hard on somebody, I don't know if it makes your side look better. And it is true that they do that to Craig too, where sometimes like they say things to Craig where I'm like, this does not make theists or conservatives or whatever party look better. But like I said, it is Friday. What is it? Saturday night. So some of these people are probably hammered, or
Sunday morning at this point.
Yeah. I think, let me see if we got I think that we've got all the questions. Let me just double check. Folks, if you have any last questions, get them in now, because we're going to wrap up in just a moment. Do check out the DebateCon 6 link in the description box and pinned at the top of the live chat. You guys, the discounts are going away tomorrow. Get the early bird tickets now. Believe me, if you want to see Craig and Witsit collide, come on
baby.
out. It's not just about the debates, though it is going to be huge, because that debate, I'm just like, wow, I can't imagine the energy that's going to happen. But it's also about meeting your favorite content creators, whether it be Craig, Daniel Hakikachu, Richard Carrier, Andrew Wilson. Come on out. It's going to be a blast at DebateCon. Have some good times. Enjoy yourself. Good laughs. Have a fun time. You only live once. I mean, like, for real, I'm the kind of guy, I love watching 90s movies at home. I love it. But at some point, I'm like, I got to go out and do things, and that's your opportunity now with DebateCon 6 is like, get out there and do things. Strike while the iron is hot. Is that tickets are affordable now and flights are affordable now. So, hey, like, there's no better time. Sign up to see these debates. All of Craig's debates are included, because I know a lot of Craig's viewers are watching right now. They're included on just the most basic economical ticket. So if you're like, hey, I'm a really economical person, I get that, is that Craig's are included on those most economical ticket, because they're kind of the main platform debates, like the ones that are on the stage. So want to say thank you, gentlemen. It's been a true pleasure to host you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Wi-Fi Gospel. Nice to meet you. That was actually a very pleasant debate. A lot of the time they get out of hand and James shouts at me a lot, but you know, this has been all right.
Yeah, same here. I appreciate you doing this.
But thank you guys. Seriously, we appreciate it. Our guests are linked in the description. Folks, what are you waiting for? If you want to hear more from their positions, you certainly can by clicking on their links right now. I'm even going to hyperlink it right now in the title. So maybe you're lazy like me and you're like, oh, like go in the description box. Go to the title, as right now I'm putting their names in these hyperlinks, folks. What are you waiting for? I do appreciate our guests, as they're the lifeblood of the channel. So go, even if you disagree with them, go over there and throw your poop at them in the comments. And with that, I'll be back in just a moment. So stick around, folks, as I'll give you updates about DebateCon 6 coming up. Thanks, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. I hope you guys have
awesome.
a rest.
Sorry, I was just muting my stream. Yeah. Thank you. See you guys in Nashville. Have a good night. Have a good one, man. Yeah, I got everything booked. I just gotta finish paying for my hotel, but that's it. Yeah, it'll be fun. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, James. You too. Bye. Good night. Who we got in here? What's up, guys? Thank you for watching. Jub, walk with the spirit. We didn't get to do closings. I thought we were gonna do that. Oh well. Boo Boo Bear, what's up, dog? John Cassell, appreciate you, homie. What'd you guys think? How'd the debate go? You know, sometimes I try to be more lively and yell more. I did a little bit during the debate. I don't know. People seem to like that, but I don't know. I just maybe I got to debate different topics to really get the fire out of me, you know? Maybe talking about philosophy doesn't get my passions going as much. Thank you, Jub. Appreciate it, dog. Yeah. Thank you. Did I handle myself entertainingly well? Is the other question. Numenon. What's up, man? It's the first time I've seen you in the chat. Appreciate you being here. Yeah, so like if I matched his energy more, that's probably the Craig we would have got, but you said shut up enough. I think that's a step forward. All right, I'm progressing. See? Someone send that clip to Andrew Wilson and say he's getting meaner. He's taking your advice. Cool. All right, well, I'll probably hop in Jim Bob's Discord or somebody if they're hanging out and talk for a little bit before I go to bed. Thank you guys so much for watching. Appreciate y'all. Have a good night.